Welcome Internet to Psychoanalytic Talk, and today we're going to be talking about the concept of distortion, which was developed by Ludwig Binswanger in his book Three Forms of Failed Existence, which I reviewed about perhaps a year ago, give or take. So the reason why I wanted to talk about this is that I find the concept to be very interesting and very valuable. So what is the concept? Well, for Binswanger, in certain forms of psychopathology, mainly schizophrenia, autism, or psychopathy, which at the time did not mean antisocial only. It meant the whole spectrum of personality disorders, going from borderline to schizoid to narcissist, and so on and so forth. The idea of psychopathy at the very beginning, at least, was that it was something that was not right with personality. Right? And so for him, the commonality of all these psychopathologies is that they can use a concept of distortion. So for him, distortion is a form of breakdown in communication. When, for example, the codes that we normally use to communicate just cease to be maintained by the individual, that their understanding and what they share to others is basically impenetrable, i.e. it can't be shared like that, and it is shared as something of idiosyncratic, i.e. it has meaning but only for the individual that is basically creating that meaning, not for the person receiving it, which then leads to distortion in communication and afterwards a breakdown in communication. So one example that Binswanger gives, and the one I'm going to be focusing on today, is this tale of a man that has a dying daughter of cancer, and she's going to basically be dying in a few months. So the last Christmas that they have together, the father offers the daughter a coffin, thinking that basically that coffin will be the only useful thing his daughter can ever have, because that's the only thing that is awaiting her, is death. Therefore, it's the only thing she can use. So here Binswanger points out very fundamentally that in our case of the common man, we will see how gross and disgusting this gift is, because it's going to shock our values. But for that man that's offering, that father offering it to his daughter, for him it's the only thing that has any value, because it's the only thing his daughter will be able to have a use of. But the terror in this is that basically through this gift he's reminding her of her death. But for him, it's the only thing that has a future. The only future is death. So very fundamentally, in this example, we can see that there is a breakdown in the social codes, that Binswanger pointed out that we would use a materialistic vocabulary to describe what is happening. We would say things like, this is hard, this is unbending, this is unreliable, that something cannot be flexible, that something has become rigid, has become impending and cannot be changed. He also points out that in that moment, people that use distortion are trying to basically maintain their singularity in the rule of life, that they are not merging with common understanding, with a common being, what is called in French être ensemble, i.e. being together. In that being togetherness, there's something of singularity that cannot be afforded to be lost, according to Binswanger, which then leads the individual to basically overcome, or to basically be maintained as a foreign body in the togetherness, i.e. it's something that in the communication is never absorbed. Their values, what they think, isn't to be integrated in the common thread of togetherness. And this is very important, because for Binswanger, what is happening at that very, very specific moment is that the individual is preventing themselves from experiencing love, from experiencing kindness, from experiencing all the positive values with others, that they are rewriting them to just be what he calls basically singular, unique, because this for him underlines the fact that they cannot risk merging with the togetherness, with the common understanding, because that would be too risky, too basically at risk of losing who they are. Therefore, they have to maintain a distance. Like that father basically maintains a distance with what is commonly understood as what we shouldn't do and what we should do. And Binswanger points out that that type of reaction causes within the common man a form of unfairness, a form of reaction, a form of hatred, because the individual is not partaking in the togetherness. Quite the opposite, he is attacking the togetherness. In a way, he's attacking who we collectively are through the fact that he deliberately maintains his presence and his being in a singularity, i.e., there is no compromise. It's the individual, the presence in the collective. But by doing so, he also fails existence because he cuts off the possibilities of interpersonal interactions, of i.e., being oneself within the group. It's being oneself against the group. Therefore, it's going to create a whole plethora of problems, a whole plethora of, in a way, deadness in relationships. That individual that uses distortion is fundamentally creating a space in which others can't follow, meaning that they never are to be integrated with others, as basically oil never merges with water. So for him, Binswanger gives this very interesting image of this is like the screw. Once the screw is bent, it cannot work, it cannot function as a normal screw. And this is a whole effect of distortion. It is not to be basically understood as just a mere mistake. It is something that's there to be able to create a distortion, because the individual at the very core cannot risk their individuality to be lost at the hands of the togetherness. And what he implies, and what I find very true, is that through doing this, they're preventing themselves from experiencing love, both in terms of themselves, but also with others. That they have blocked possibilities, that they have made themselves the ultimate value at the exclusion of others. But this also means that they exclude all the positiveness of others, that others can't change them and they try and change others. In a way, it becomes a game of domination in the communication, meaning that it can never be reciprocal, it can't be togetherness anymore. And I think that this concept is very important, especially because I think that often we see these phenomenons of distortions at the various degrees and levels, and we often think that this is a mistake or miscommunication, but it isn't. It is something more fundamental, something in a way of an ultimate tentative to try and maintain one's identity within interpersonal relationships, even though it destroys interpersonal relationships. In many ways, if you've read The Divided Self of Ronald D. Lane, it's a bit like that, and that's the image I have in my mind, is that the person is so at risk of losing whatever they have left of themselves that they can't risk an authentic communication and have to distort in order to save, in order to protect whatever good elements are left in themselves. And if we go back to the example of that father that offers a coffin, one can see it also as he is already burying his daughter, perhaps because that authenticity in himself of having to grieve is too hard, too complicated, and he might also be afraid of losing himself with his daughter in a melancholic movement of the psyche. Therefore, he offers a coffin almost as a protection, almost as if my daughter's going to end up in a box and she will not hurt me. The loss of this relationship will not hurt because I myself basically am putting her away. I'm putting her in a box. Therefore, I am protected. But by doing so, he's also destroying and killing the relationship of the last weeks and months he could have had with his daughter. And I think, and this is only my interpretation, right? I don't know if this what was going through the head of this man, but what I'm trying to say is that in this moment, something is destroyed because the togetherness is seen as an even worse form of destruction of the psyche of the individual. And I find it very interesting and very valuable clinically, because it helps us to understand that what we are basically creating is this we're trying to, as a therapist, to create a togetherness in the relationship. But that togetherness is something that has to be very slowly brought to the individual, slowly but surely integrated, because the risk of losing oneself is so deep, that risk of annihilation is so profound, that one has to always be very, very careful with the integration of the individual. But that's the aim, is to try and go beyond the distortion, or try, if we were to reuse Binswanger's idea, to try and straighten up the screw, so we can make it that the person can then again love and risk a bit of themselves in a relationship. But that's no easy task. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. That's pretty much it. If you have any comments, anything you want to ask, feel free to do so in the comments. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.